I've got a medium-sized project here. Um, um, we're focusing in on just a small part of it, and it's had a lot of AI-driven code edits to it. They have been applied very quickly. Lots has been deleted, lots has been recreated. This project went through many rounds of very rapid application development. There was even probably some vibe coding that happened. I can't remember. But overall, the code base is in okay quality, but it is a bit of a mess in some key places. And one in particular is that we've ended up with, as this file says, a 487 line God object. Now, 487 lines doesn't sound like much, but this is a really bad God object because what it's doing with its interactions with LLMs is vastly complicated. And in practice, it's not 487 lines, it's more like 4,000 lines spread across other classes and files that are less obvious and hidden, but they're keyed off this 500 line object. The flows are so complicated that it got to the point of trying to do any code maintenance or editing, kept fixing one bug and breaking another one. And that cycle is one that can easily waste weeks of time. So instead, we're going to improve that. And started off with a conversation with this lead in. This legacy project has blah, 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 blah. Just some basic descriptions about what's going on. And I said it's grown in complexity. It's too much. We have duplication, outgrown itself, etc. And I pushed it to give me remembering you ain't going to need it and keep it simple, stupid. Then provide clear alternatives and be opinionated. And we're just looking for options. So this led to what was quite a long series of conversations. I'm not going to go through all the details, but there was a lot of discussion back and forth. The key thing that happened is we discussed different layouts of the folder structure, and the primary ones that were useful, here it is down here. Right, so this ordering here, which was quite a massive change of which folders things were structured in, which is useful because that enables us to then push the LLM to start to rethink which functions go where and which classes connect to other classes. Here it's only put 3 classes per folder. There's a lot more than that, but that's illustrative of what's going to happen. And so a lot of the debate was around, are these subfolders correct? Are they appropriate? Do they correctly model the structure of how the app works and internally and how it's implemented? Generally, the answer was no. So we went through more and more discussion on this and got to a better version here. And you can see there's a mix of existing stuff, enhanced stuff, new stuff, and so on. And eventually we got a version that I was moderately happy with. I then actually made the changes manually because the LLM, there was too much changed, couldn't trust it to move those files around correctly. And it was an opportunity for me to skim read the files and look for any other issues that were lurking in there that the LLM hadn't noticed. I found a few, fixed them as I went, came back to it and told it, here you go, we've adopted your suggested architecture with small improvements. Took a copy paste of its structure and then I edited it to reflect some other changes I'd made in passing that were better. It was happy with that, it adopted it, and somewhere down here, it goes on at length about how this is all brilliant. I don't really care. But what I said now is, now output this plan into a markdown file in bullet point format. Bullet point format, this unfortunately, it used to work really well. The last couple of months it has worked really badly, especially in Cursor where it often screws up. And sometimes it works first time, in this case it did. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 attempts to get it to generate an actually good format. This one is good format, it is bullet point, it's clear. But quite often these days, instead of this, it will generate something that's full of source code, which is far too fragile and doesn't actually implement well. Anyway, got it to output that, it's happy with it, and so on. So what we immediately do is switch to a new window empty context and just start with proceed with inputting phase one. Because we've got this file open, the way we could do this is just open the file and Control T in cursor. And if you see here, current cursor automatically picks up the currently open tab. So I didn't need to say which project it was or which markdown file it was going to use. It already has that in context. It goes off, it implements it, it makes some decisions which are probably correct. It's very pats itself on the back about how brilliant everything is and everything is done. The first thing we do is assume it lied. So we now open that one again and we say a junior engineer has attempted to implement phase one. Read the current source code and evaluate to what extent. Actually, I'm going to precede this with, I want this to act as a senior engineer. Acting as a senior engineer expert in, particularly in Node.js. Read the current source code and evaluate to what extent the engineer has fulfilled the plan, but also especially look out for any divergence. So we're looking where the AI might have gone off piste, might have done its own weird and wondrous things. Highlight any bad code smells, bad patterns, etc. And finally, the thing is, it will now probably over-engineer that response. So we put in, remember, at all times, Kiss and Yagni. These are the best cure, in a very few words, so they're best cure for over-engineering. And we could now say, now if it waffles too much, I would tell it to itemize the response, but let's just see what happens. Off it goes. Yeah, today I'm using Grok. I'm not in favor of Grok in generally, but just experimenting with it at the moment since Cursor is doing a promotion on it. It's fast, this is very true, but it's also not very smart. So the non-fast Grok, I think, would be a lot smarter, but in fast mode, it's and this is just the free one that's running on Cursor at the moment. It's fast but a bit dumb. That's fine. It's partly why we're managing the process a lot more. One thing that's interesting is it does all these little flickers of reading lots of different files and looking at lots of pieces of files before making any decisions, which is great. It's what we want. And I'm sitting on 0% of usage limit because my Cursor account for this project only flipped over this week, or I wasn't working on this project until very recently, but it flipped over. Effectively, today is the first day of usage on this project, so it's reset. Of course, having just said that Grok fast is very fast, it goes and tries to prove me wrong by being slow and timing out after 25 seconds there. Right. So we've got the file open. What did phase one actually say? Here we go. Here were the phase one changes. It looks to me like it's no, we are not. There are no tests here. Oh, I want to say we're not wasting time with tests on this. There was no mention of tests. There was no tests in the plan. There's no reason for it to talk about tests. Anyway, okay, here we go. It's reviewed this. Has it found, this is the key thing, any critical issues or missing implementation? It believes it has. it believes this cannot compile or run. Interesting. Let's see what happens. I'm not convinced that's true. And token calculator not moved. There's some interesting observations here. I agree that the old file still exists because when it was going through its original implementation for phase 1, it was supposed to delete some files, and it doesn't have permission to run RM in this project. So it should have popped up an attempt to use RM, and I would have had to manually accept it, but it didn't, which was a sign that it almost certainly didn't actually remove the files. Anyway, let's go back to see what else it's observing. Services not updated. I mean, this one is a serious problem. There is no point in moving. Actually, no, this could be okay. It could be okay to have not updated those. I think those are more of a phase 2 issue. But yeah, it's observation that what's happened is copy paste instead of actually moving things is worrying. This bit here, where it's saying I explicitly asked for something, that was in the project instructions for this project. And I might well ignore it because I'm not sure it's relevant for this thing at the moment. This is classic Yagni. Yeah, that is entirely irrelevant. That's a feature that doesn't exist, shouldn't exist, and has messed up an existing feature around cost by adding this capabilities and performance trash that we had no permission to do, should never have been added. Just reading the other stuff. I like that. Completion score, 35%. That's pretty bad. So this now gives us a hit list of stuff to do instead. Now, interestingly, I wouldn't actually ask an agent to do that. What's happened, these mistakes, and the fact it says completion score is only 35%, I would normally expect a completion score of 95% or 100% on something like this, maybe 90%. The 90% would be because the second LLM invocation will have a difference of opinion in how the phase should be implemented. And that difference of opinion is often irrelevant or off track or doesn't matter. And so you can ignore 90 to 100% is normally fine. But the fact that, in this case, Grok has done such a bad job of making quite substantial, serious mistakes and errors in what was a very simple plan that it had generated means I have absolutely no faith that if I now ask it to run through the fixes, that it will actually do them. If you do that, you are pulling yourself into a world of allowing AI agents to go round and round in circles and spend a vast amount of time, effort, money doing pointless work. So instead, what I'm using this whole process for is to get down to a hit list of stuff I need to read, which is all these feedback here, and on a case-by-case step basis decide which ones are relevant. Some of them might be a few letters fix, like this one here. I might, if this looks like it's real, I'll go and check it. I just apply that as it takes me less than 2 seconds to add that change, especially with autocomplete in the IDE. I just do that by hand. If some of these become, and the ones where old files still exist, I'll manually verify and just delete them by hand. That's fine, very quick. More complicated stuff. This one here, I would probably just delete it by hand and see what issues the IDE automatically detects and delete those as well. But what I might do is then start a fourth conversation with the LLM in which I say specifically, compare this phase 1 plan here in the main window to this observed failing, generate a solution or just solve it, and I would watch it do just that one fix and allow it to do the work, but I would just check that it actually does it right. And I would also at the end review all these and check whether there was anything suspicious I think it's missed. And finally, because there were so many mistakes, I would actually rerun this whole conversation a second time after those fixes. I'd just hit a resubmit here. But of course, second time round, it'll be using the updated version of the code. Generally speaking, as I said, this completion score, if I do this with Sonnet 4 or GPT 4.1 or even GPT 5, to be honest, last few times I did it with Gemini as well, this would have been much higher, which is partly why I say that I think the Grok fast is too fast and takes things a bit too fast and loose. But still, fast is useful because it lets us go through stuff quickly. When we're doing this roundabout process, me not having to wait so long in itself can be better than a higher quality model. But I would have preferred this to have been Sonnet 4 and been a bit slower and not have to do this extra iteration of manually reviewing bugs.